Hello, YouTube and BitChute friends. I'm going to do a brief, um, I'm going to play a brief video, which is called the Sierpinski triangle. It's a visualization of a algorithm of a formula, and I will elaborate on what I think it might represent in terms of how we are structured in a psychic way and what this sort of very elegant result. I consider this quite an elegant formulation. It's like anything in nature that has significance and meaning to us. There is an elegance to it when we observe it, when we understand the balance or structure behind something. It is so magnificent. I'm not saying this necessarily is magnificent. Somebody figured out a formula, or what is an algorithm, I suppose, and structured this triangle. So I'm just going to play this for a minute. Why isn't it playing?
This will blow your mind. Start by drawing 3 points in the shape of a triangle. To start us off, choose a point anywhere within this triangle. Now, we'll draw more points by repeating 2 simple rules over and over. The first rule tells us to randomly select one of the original 3 points. For example, suppose we choose 3. The second rule tells us to move halfway from the point we just drew toward the selected point and draw another point. That's it. Now we repeat the 2 rules from the point we just drew. Randomly select one of the original 3 points. Suppose we choose point 1 this time. Move halfway from the point we just drew toward point number 1 and draw another point. Now we'll repeat once again. After each new point, we'll randomly select one of the original 3 points, move halfway toward it, and draw another point. The question is, what happens if we continue to draw hundreds or even thousands of points using these 2 simple rules over and over? Well, here's what it looks like after 100 points, and here's what it looks like after 1,000 points. And finally, here's what it looks like after 25,000 points have been drawn. As if by magic, this eerie image emerges. It's known as the Sierpinski triangle, and it's a famous fractal. Amazingly, although the points are drawn in a random manner, the Sierpinski triangle will always materialize after enough points are drawn.
All right, let me switch over to my video version, my live video version. The reason I chose to do to play this video regarding this algorithm is because in my mind, for quite some time, there have been questions I've been asking myself how it's possible for a population, people like myself, always there's some people that are more critically inclined than others. I accept that. I think there's a cross-section of the population that is much more accepting than myself of the world around. It's kind of like live and let live to some extent, and an acceptance of the mystery that we are a part of without really wondering why. I have a tendency to wonder why things are the way they are. And some people take this into very high levels of investigation. I think there are people that investigate the mystery deeply on all levels, whether it's through an extension of our spiritual self into this mystery, or whether it's just a purely physical investigation. All of these, I think, are valid. It's very important to wonder. Well, it's not just important, it's how we're built. I think that the reason we exist in the first place is because it's wondrous, and we're wondering. We're wondering about the wondrous nature of our existence. So it's been somewhat of a concern and a thoughtful kind of recognition. I recognize that there is something happening around me that is so anomalous to my nature. The way I wonder about things, for example, the shit show. I wonder how the shit show has been able to be propagated the way it has, or how, let's say, the idea of people landing on a celestial orb called a moon with a tin can that's made out of styrofoam and tin foil, more or less, relative to what nature presents us. The vacuum of space is brutal. It would be brutal to any kind of life form. The vacuum of space, the way we're being told, would be absolutely brutal. And to send some kind of vessel with three guys in it to land on this place called the moon in the vacuum of space, and not to be surrounded by heavy lead sealed metal containers. Anyway, how is this being propagated? How is this compliance and enforcement in the population being propagated? How does it work? So I'm going to reference this fractal, this triangle, a visual representation of how something duplicates itself. And the question that I have is, how is it possible for the bastards and the backroom boys to be so successful in terms of controlling and manipulating our actions and reactions and desires and thoughts, and everything that's going on seems anything but ourselves. We're not thinking for ourselves. I might be getting ahead of myself in some of the explanations, but just bear with me. I'm just going to go through this. So I was also just listening to one of my favorite narcissists on YouTube called Owen Benjamin, who had an interview with an Alison Monroe, I think her name is. She has a channel. She used to be a journalist with a mainstream media thing, and she realized how flawed that whole journalist thing has become, and she's gone on her own, and she interviewed Owen, and Owen showed himself again for a short while. He gave us a glimpse of the narcissism I've talked about. And I know people will resent me saying this about him because he says a lot of good things. He makes a lot of sense. But one of the more important things for me is the integrity in terms of understanding oneself. And I believe that Owen Benjamin has a great deal of rage. I like another favorite narcissist of mine is Jordan Peterson. He doesn't have as many good things to say as Owen Benjamin, for what it matters. Anyway, Owen, during this interview, like I say, he exposed himself once more, the narcissist he is, and his rage comes out against the interviewer. And I think she was very sincere. I could tell that she was making a real effort to be congenial in the interview, and he completely misunderstood her and got his back up. And I know that he's been pummeled, apparently, whatever the explanations are. The man has not done enough introspection for me to respect him, but he does say a lot of decent things, a lot of good things. Anyway, he brought up, or she asked actually, she asked him his opinion on why it is that the bastards are able to get away with everything in such a worldwide kind of phenomenon. It's a worldwide phenomenon. Benjamin calls it a spell, the magic spell, the spell makers, the people that are magicians who have us captured in their secret spells. And then I don't think he said that, but he referred to this idea of this triangle, how it's possible that the majority of a population could just reenact the will of what clearly is detrimental to us, but certainly is some kind of a directive, a will. A will is out there. So the shit show, the beer virus, the will behind that was instigated, and likely in many different forms. And I often wondered, the backroom boys, did they make a phone call to someone, or where is this directive coming from? And quite clearly, what this triangle demonstrates to me, is how I could use this as a metaphor or a representation of the human psyche, how it works. And of course, I think that what did Owen make a reference how this would be initiated? I don't think he did. I'm going to say, in my mind, I think he did say there is like an overall narrative that is being presented to us, and then it is reenacted by each person dot. Each dot in this triangle is literally millions and uh, billions of dots of people that make this complex reality uh, conform to the overall idea. For example, a shit show that we're just going through, which is, by the way, I don't think it's over. It was a trial thing. It goes on. It continues in other versions because as long as there is this algorithm, this triangle that is creating a structure underneath our psyche. And so here's my explanation for it. So the three original points of this triangle, for me, is the fundamental story or narrative, and it could be isolated to you know, mini stories and macro stories. Like the shit show is a macro story, the moon landing is a macro story, and then what happens within this representation is the propagation of the three dots is introduced into each dot that happens in this triangle and reproduces itself in some version over and over. So there isn't really an instruction to an individual dot within this triangle. It comes as a kind of amorphous, somewhat mysterious how it can take hold. I, I mean, if you look at the educational system and how we're being, the propaganda or how we're being propagandized, I can understand how a story begins to infiltrate our mind and we have no ability to be critical anymore and we just accept it. And then once that happens on a massive scale through education, for example, we are left with this this kind of structure that happens through our behavior and actions and thoughts, is propagated in a very extensive manner. Again, I refer to the shit show, how extensive worldwide, how successful it's been. So that is a very good explanation of the mechanism without calling upon the bastards in the basement somewhere giving instructions. It is something that is propagated by a fundamental story or narrative that implants itself by the bastards in an original format, and that may go way back. It may not be just like in the last few years, it may be in the last few centuries or even millennia, how this is structured through culture as well. It gets more complex when I start thinking about this, but I've referred to culture being this propaganda method of creating the stories that need to be retold. And I'm not saying all of it is shit and garbage. I'm saying that the things that are most concerning me are the stuff that makes no sense, how it can actually flourish in the minds of people and be recreated over and over again. So here's something that Benjamin referred to this, but here's where I would say the crucial aspect of the success of this is, as I have always said, okay, you can call on critical thinking and say, well, if you're a critical thinker, you can avoid this. Obviously not, because there are what I consider to be intelligent people who are critical thinkers who are completely engrossed within this fractal of behavior. And the only thing that stands in the way, the only mechanism within this successful triangle that would begin to break up the formula is what I've referred to as a conscience. So here we have we are beings part of an incredible mystery that enjoys the maybe the entertainment of it all. When you invoke, let's say, for example, as Benjamin invoked evil, the idea of evil being the driving force behind this mechanism, I suppose you could make a reference to that. I would just simply say it's not evil, it's a suspension of conscience. So as soon as we're we're willing to suspend the fundamental nature of our, or the essence within us, which is our ability to do the right thing at any given time. Whatever that story might be that wants us to replicate itself, the 3 points want us to replicate them, their worldview, their idea, which is fine, fundamentally. We are built this way. I think this is how humanity moves. We're not just like individuals in the middle of nothingness doing stuff. No, we actually are intertwined and interconnected like this, this really interesting kind of algorithm triangle thing, with the exception that the 3 dots that inform this fractal rely, and I'm talking about the ones like the shit show stuff, relies on us suspending conscience. So as soon as we, I somehow don't believe we have the ability to be, what's the word? Totally irrational in any form. I mean, this is a very significant rational representation where a person will feel very connected to everyone else, right? When they're propagating whatever their action might be. Let's say the NASA moon launch, where they say, well, 40,000 people were involved. How could this be a ripoff on our ability to understand that this was a hoax, that this was a total lie? Well, this triangle, this formulation, is a good explanation of how 40,000 dots would have been able to contribute, because the impulse, the essence of the 3 dots was implanted in them, and then you act and react accordingly. It's kind of like the brilliance of these people, their intelligence is at the service of the story, not in terms of the service of understanding what it is in fact they're doing. There is no way out of this triangle. The only way out of the triangle is conscience, which then becomes one of the 3 dots, or all 3 dots, which create a triangle that actually works. That's not destructive, or that's not like the world that we have around us. I mean, this is kind of like the ant colony that works, or the bees that make hives. They all have this this sort of fractal structure. I mean, even the beehives look like they are reenacting the algorithm of their own being, of their own structure, and it's elegant, it's beautiful, it works. So their directive, whichever that works, the queen instills, the queen is the foundation of the triangle, and it instills this narrative, this story into the drones, into every, it's a bad name, into all, into this clan, this group, this magnificent group of creatures that make everything work the right way, the way it should. And as human beings, I think there are some latitude in behavior within this triangle that might even initiate a branch. So even if it is working, like I say, I always I enjoy finding fault in the people I like, because it continuously puts the onus on me confirming that I'm wondering and questioning. I don't just blindly accept. I mean, generally speaking, I just don't I like, even when I like something, I generally still like, I enjoy questioning it. And then when it fundamentally, I can't find anything wrong, well, okay, then I'll accept it and I'll incorporate it. There are probably many different levels of looking at this, but my instinct here when I saw this diagram appearing in front of me was to relate it to the success that the success of the bastards over the last 2.5 years, especially with the beer virus, and many other formulations, even the very structure of when you look into governments and how everything, the organizations within, how they replicate themselves over and over through the people, through the dots. And the people in the dots, they don't think about anything. They're just like intuitively or reactively just doing the thing that the triangle wants you to do. So I think that's a reasonable explanation of how this has come about. But I've said this before, the essence uh, of our being is not within any of these confines even. We supersede all of this structure and we fit into the mystery in the highest way when we invoke conscience. The thing within us that always, always wants to do the right thing. And when we're not doing the right thing, we correct. We're self-corrective. We're self-corrective. But that's not something that happens when we're stuck in a triangle. I'd like to hear your views on how this could actually be, or let me put it this way: what kind of a triangle or algorithm we would be a part of within the conscience triangle? What that might look like? Is it each dot is um, its own kind of elegant algorithm within a larger scheme of things? I don't know. I'll have to do a little more thinking about it. But in essence, I think you get the idea what I'm talking about here, how this represents the nature of the success uh, that I see all around me, and how unfortunate it is that uh, we are so easily compartmentalized into a mathematical formula of existence. I'll just leave it there. I'll leave it there, and you can make up your own mind about how much sense this makes. And I think that the bastards who they exist, we'll never know. I don't think who they are. They're a very hidden bunch. They're very secretive. They're a shy bunch. They don't want to. Um, they're way beyond any kind of Kissinger or Soros or all the public figures that present themselves as movers and shakers. They're just part of this triangle as well. So they're, as Owen said, they're just like Soros, a frightened, greedy little man who's just reactive within this triangle as well. I think he's right as far as greedy little men are concerned. Um, and this is not this is not a behind the scenes type of person. These are people that are front people for a reason. They have the high profile they do because they are particularly offensive. They're so obviously offensive. When you listen to Trudeau lift his way through his speeches, he is becoming very offensive. He's on purpose offensive in order to make this whole thing work the way it does. It's quite extraordinary in many ways. People, they elected him apparently because he was such a cute guy, and now the beauty is not something external; it's something internal. And as you become familiar with who you like, you might regret and even be repulsed somewhat by having liked this person. Um, yeah. Anyway, he's not a behind the scenes guy. He's just a front man, and we'll never know who they are. But the structure of how things are actually functioning is elegant. I have to say I have uh, quite a regard for how this has been. This triangle idea has been hijacked by the bastards. Yeah. Anyway.